Alfred Rouse entered the world on April 6, 1894, at Milkwood Road in Herne Hill, London. He was born into a family of 3 siblings, with an English father and an Irish mother. His father, Walter, worked as a hosier, while his mother, said to be an actress, left the family in 1900, leaving the children under the care of their paternal aunt. Despite this upheaval, Rouse was known for his good behavior and attended a local council school where he excelled academically and athletically. Leaving school at 14, Rouse started as an office boy at an estate agency before finding more stable employment at a textile manufacturing firm. After 5 years there, he embarked on carpentry training while attending evening classes to further his education. Alongside his studies, Rouse displayed a talent for music, mastering several instruments and earning a reputation as a skilled pianist, violinist, and mandolinist. His rich baritone voice often graced the gatherings of his evening classes. In 1909, he secured a position at a furniture manufacturer in the West End, where he crossed paths with Lily Mae Watkins, a young clerk he met at a local dance, igniting a romantic relationship. Just 4 days into World War I, Rouse joined the British Army, enlisting as a private in the 24th Queen's Regiment. Before heading to France for training, he married his fiancée at St. Saviour's Church on November 29th. Arriving in France on March 15, 1915, Rouse spent some time stationed in Paris before his unit entered combat. His unit was later engaged in the Battle of Festubert in Artois, commencing on May 15th. During the final day of the Battle of Festubert, just 10 weeks into his deployment, Rouse suffered severe injuries from a high-explosive shell that exploded nearby, causing fragments of shrapnel to pierce his head and leg, rendering him unconscious. He only regained consciousness as his hospital train passed through Bedford en route to a UK Ministry of Defence hospital unit. Hospitalized for nearly a year, Rouse underwent multiple surgeries to remove shrapnel embedded in his head and to address injuries to his leg, which left him with limited mobility. After treatment in military hospitals in Leeds and Clacton-on-Sea, he was formally discharged from the Army on February 11, 1916, and awarded a military pension of 20 shillings per week. After completing his recovery, Rouse returned to Stoke Newington to live with his wife. However, contemporary medical records from this period revealed that he remained severely disabled. In July of 1916, his doctor observed that Rouse had memory issues and was unable to wear any type of hat due to irritation around the scar on his temporal lobe. While his speech and writing abilities remained unaffected, medical notes mentioned that he slept well unless agitated in any way, leading to an increase in his military pension to 25 shillings per week in August of 1916. By late January of 1917, Rouse's doctor noticed some progress in his leg injury and believed it could potentially be overcome by Rouse's effort. A year later, Rouse reported experienced bouts of dizziness, although he appeared talkative and sometimes laughed excessively. In September of 1918, Rouse again complained of faulty memory and insomnia. On July 30, 1919, a doctor examining Rouse noted that, although he restricted his knee movement to no more than 30%, there were no long-term effects from the head wound sustained in battle. As a result, Rouse's pension, which had been 27 shillings and 6 pence per week since September of 1918, was reduced to 12 shillings per week, effective from September 17, 1919. By August of 1920, a final examination revealed complete healing of his head injury and significant improvement in knee movement. In an effort to regain his health and mobility, Rouse became an active member of a local tennis club and undertook various physically demanding jobs starting in 1920, many involving vehicle mechanics, which led to him becoming moderately skilled in the field. During this time, he also began engaging in illicit relationships, often posing as a single man and seducing women and girls. Notably, he impregnated a girl from Edinburgh, leaving her to give birth in a home for unwed mothers. In 1925, he began an affair with a domestic servant named Nellie Tucker, who later obtained a child support order against him after giving birth to a baby girl in 1928. In June of 1929, Rouse secured employment as a commercial traveler for a Leicester-based firm specializing in braces and garters. This job paid him £4 weekly plus expenses, enabling him and his wife to obtain a mortgage on a house in Freer and Barnet. Additionally, in the summer of 1930, he purchased a 1928 Morris Minor. Due to Rouse's high libido and widespread promiscuity, coupled with his job involving extensive travel across the country, he engaged in numerous affairs with women throughout 1929 and 1930. These encounters often occurred during his work-related travels and involved women from various backgrounds, both married and single. Many of these women, like the Edinburgh Girl and Tucker, were from poor backgrounds and were misled by Rouse's charming demeanor, false claims of wealth as a London entrepreneur, and promises of marriage. Despite already being married and a father, Rouse bigamously married at least 3 of these women, leading to the birth of several illegitimate children. By the summer of 1930, Rouse had already faced 1 child support order from Tucker, with whom he had an ongoing affair. She was now pregnant with their 2nd child and expecting him to marry her. Another woman, Phyllis Jenkins from Wales, was also pregnant and anticipated marriage. Additionally, Rouse was confronted with impending child support order cases from women across the country, including one in Paris. The exact moment Rouse conceived his plan remains uncertain, as he offered conflicting explanations following his arrest. However, he admitted that the idea of faking his own death began to take shape after reading about the unsolved murder of Agnes Kesson, a Scottish barmaid, in Epsom in June of 1930. Additionally, the news of Tucker expecting their 2nd child in the summer of 1930 played a pivotal role in his decision-making process. Rouse claimed he simply wanted a fresh start, but was also concerned about the financial well-being of his legal wife and son. Months before executing his plan, he took out a £1,000 life insurance policy in his name, with his legal wife named as the beneficiary, ensuring financial security in case of his accidental death while driving his vehicle. On either November 2nd or 3rd, Rouse approached an acquaintance at a pub called the Swan and Pyramid, someone of similar build who had confided in him about loneliness. Rouse offered him a job in the Midlands, claiming he could secure it through his work as a commercial traveler. He arranged to drive together to Leicester on November 5th, coinciding with Guy Fawkes Night, reasoning that any fire in his car would be less conspicuous amidst the festivities. Rouse also provided the man with whiskey to ease any potential resistance. Around 1:50 in the morning on November 6, 1930, 2 young men returning from a Guy Fawkes Night dance in Northampton spotted a distant fire as they walked down Hardingstone Lane towards their home in Hardingstone Village. Assuming it was a post-celebratory bonfire, they encountered a smartly dressed man carrying a briefcase heading in the opposite direction. When they mentioned the blaze, the man, later identified as Rouse, agreed it looked like a bonfire and continued on towards the main Northampton-London road. Approaching the fire, the men discovered it was a Morris Minor engulfed in flames on the side of the country lane, with flames reaching up to 12 feet high. They quickly summoned the Hardingstone Village Constable, Harry Bertie Copping, and the parish constable. Using water from a nearby pond, they managed to extinguish the fire, revealing a charred corpse across the front seats, with the head burned beyond recognition and the right arm missing at the elbow. Constable Copping initially mistook the victim's scorched skull as a rugby ball. Notably, a wooden mallet with 3 human hairs attached was found nearby. Despite extensive damage to the vehicle, the largely intact rear number plate revealed it belonged to Alfred Arthur Rouse. Upon learning of the young men's encounter with the individual at the end of Hardingstone Lane, investigators issued an appeal through local and national press, urging the man to step forward and aid their inquiries. The case received extensive coverage in numerous national newspapers on November 7th. A forensic examination of the vehicle revealed that a joint on the petrol feeding pipe between the tank and the carburetor had been deliberately loosened before the fire ignited, allowing petrol to freely flow both into and beneath the car. Tests conducted on the victim's blood and microscopic examination of his air passages indicated that he had been alive, albeit unconscious, when the fire started. Furthermore, it was estimated that he had died within 30 seconds of the fire igniting. The victim, believed to be between 33 and 37 years old, showed signs of having worked in an extremely dusty environment throughout his life, based on the condition of his lungs. Police visited Rouse's home in Freer and Barnet to interview his wife. She confirmed that her husband had left around 8:30 p.m. on November 5th for a business meeting in Leicester and returned home around 2 a.m. the following morning without saying anything. She was then asked to accompany the police to Northampton to help identify the victim. However, due to the condition of the remains, she was not allowed to view the body directly, but was instead asked to identify scraps of clothing and a wallet containing 30 shillings found with the victim. Mrs. Rouse indicated that the clothing resembled what her husband wore, although she couldn't be certain, but confirmed that the wallet belonged to him. Rouse hitchhiked to London and arrived at his Freer and Barnet home around 6:20 a.m. After a brief 30-minute stay, he took a train to Glamorganshire to meet Phyllis Jenkins, whom he had promised to marry. When Jenkins asked about his car, Rouse claimed that it had been stolen in Northamptonshire the previous day, explaining the delay in his arrival. He assured her that he had reported the theft to both the police and his insurance company. The following morning, Jenkins showed him a newspaper featuring a photo of his burned-out car, speculating about the owner's identity and whether foul play was involved. Rouse denied ownership of the car and announced his intentions to travel to Hammersmith Broadway by coach. He boarded a coach destined for Hammersmith Broadway at 10 a.m. After Rouse's departure, Jenkins informed local police of his visit and his intended destination. They, in turn, notified the Metropolitan Police Service of his whereabouts. As a result, Rouse was arrested that evening at Hammersmith Coach Terminal by Detective Sergeant Skelly of the Metropolitan Police, who had been waiting for him. At the Hammersmith Police Station, Rouse was informed that officers from Northamptonshire Police were en route to interview him. In response, he provided a convoluted statement claiming that his victim was a hitchhiker he encountered at St. Albans, who accidentally set fire to his vehicle while Rouse stepped away to relieve himself. He also claimed that he was on his way to Scotland Yard to confess when he was arrested, expressing relief that it was all over. Upon the arrival of Northamptonshire police officers, Rouse was cautioned and transported to Northampton Police Station. At Northampton Police Station, Rouse revised his initial statement, claiming he had encountered the victim hitchhiking along the Great North Road towards the Midlands and had offered him a ride. He admitted mistakenly driving to Hardingstone Lane due to getting lost. He stopped the vehicle at that location to relieve himself and asked the man, whom he had given a cigar, to refill the car's petrol tank from a can in the boot. According to Rouse, when he turned around, he found the vehicle engulfed in flames with the man trapped inside. Despite attempting to open the door, he was driven back by the fire and fled the scene in a state of panic. When confronted with forensic evidence indicating the loosening of the feeding pipe between the petrol tank and the carburetor, Rouse maintained that the fire was accidental. He suggested the inebriated victim may have ignited the blaze by lighting the cigar he had been given, accidentally spilling petrol from the tank inside the vehicle during refilling. On November 27th, Rouse appeared at Northampton Assizes to face formal charges for the murder of an unknown man. He was remanded into custody until December 3rd, when a trial date of January 26 was set. The trial of Alfred Rouse commenced at the Northampton Winter Assizes on January 26, 1931, presided over by Mr. Justice Talbot. William Norman Brickett served as the chief prosecuting counsel for the Crown, with assistance from Richard Elwes. Donald Finmore led the defense team, aided by A.P. Marshall. On this occasion, Rouse entered a formal plea of not guilty to the charge of murdering an unidentified man. Throughout his trial, Rouse maintained the stance that the death of the unidentified man was accidental. Donald Finmore, his defense counsel, presented an engineer who testified that excessive heat in a burning car could result in the loosening of the joint on the feeding pipe, supporting Rouse's claim that the victim inadvertently ignited the vehicle. However, this assertion was challenged by Sir Bernard Spilsbury and Dr. Eric Shaw, who conducted the autopsy on the victim. They testified that the victim was alive but unconscious when the fire started, and that he had likely been struck on the head with the mallet found near the car before the fire began. Spilsbury also highlighted that a fragment of the victim's clothing, soaked in petrol, supported the prosecution's argument that Rouse had doused both the victim and the car in petrol before setting it ablaze. Another witness, a vehicular expert, testified that the joint on the feeding pipe had been deliberately loosened to allow petrol to flow into and beneath the motor. contradicting the defense's claim of accidental ignition due to heat. During the trial, prosecutor William Norman Brickett handed Rouse the actual carburetor of his vehicle, causing visible nervousness as he attempted to explain previous witness testimonies regarding the loosening of the feeding pipe. The prosecution argued that Rouse's motive for the murder was to fake his own death, enabling him to escape financial obligations resulting from his numerous affairs and start anew. Testimony from 3 of Rouse's mistresses illustrated the discord in his domestic life. Government Fire and Insurance Inspector Colonel Cutbirth Buckle demonstrated to the jury how the fire was deliberately started by tampering with the petrol feeding pipe. Rouse took the stand in his defense, maintaining his claim of accidental death. Despite moments of confidence, he faltered under questioning, often admitting contradictions between his statements and evidence. He struggled to explain why he lied about his car being stolen and reported it to the police, or why one of his mistresses testified that he smelled of petrol and had scorched eyebrows when he arrived at her house on November 6th. The trial concluded within 6 days. In his closing remarks to the jury, Mr. Justice Talbot emphasized, "These factors undoubtedly cast serious suspicion on this man, the owner of the car, who drove it to the location where it was burned. If he is innocent, he has raised suspicion against himself through his own actions." After just 25 minutes of deliberation, the jury unanimously found Rouse guilty of murder on January 31st. Upon hearing the verdict, Rouse calmly declared to Mr. Justice Talbot, "I am innocent, sir." Despite this, he was sentenced to death. Rouse lodged an appeal against his conviction, arguing primarily that evidence of his immoral character had unfairly influenced the jury. The appeal was heard on February 23, 1931, but it was ultimately unsuccessful. Rouse met his fate on Tuesday, March 10, 1931, when he was executed by hanging at Bedford Jail. In the days leading up to his death, his legal wife and 2 of his mistresses took turns visiting him to say their final goodbyes. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to join our community. We upload every Monday and Thursday at 4 p.m. For more content like this, be sure to check out our other videos on the channel. You can also follow us on our other social media platforms for uploads and updates. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.